Good evening, everyone. Very, very sorry that we're starting this late. We haven't done this in a while, and some things were just happening that we couldn't control. Um, so we're gonna go right into the meeting so we can start. Colleagues, can I get a motion and second to reconvene the public session of the meeting?
So moved, Bavosa.
Second, Castellano Minaya.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Colleagues, can I get a motion and second to accept minutes of the Board of Education regular meeting held on February 6, 2024, as submitted by the clerk and secretary to the Board of Education?
So moved, Bavosa.
Second, Lewis.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up on the agenda is Board of Education announcements. Do any of my colleagues have any announcements they would like to make?
I had the opportunity with many of my colleagues and superintendent and members of the cabinet and family, friends, parents to attend the basketball games at the Westchester County Center. The basketball games of our girls and our boys at New Rochelle High School. It was a wonderful experience. Congratulations to all of our student athletes and all of their wonderful coaches. And just congratulations to all of our student athletes and also academic teams. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. I just want to echo that as well. Ms. Williams, myself, Ms. Ross, Ms. Lewis, we were all there with Dr. Reynolds, and it was an amazing time. And it was a great game, and it was against Mount Vernon, so But even though we didn't get the win, our kids played amazing, and I'm very, very proud and happy for them. This week, I had the chance to be at the grand opening of the new Remington Boys and Girls Club. So first day open, brand new facility, a $10 million state-of-the-art facility. And I got the chance to be there, which was really exciting because it's the first new youth development building in New Rochelle in over 45 years. So it was exciting to see all the kids there. Capacity of almost 700 kids can be able to go there. So it was nice to see all the little kids running around in that new building and back in the Lincoln attendance zone.
I had the pleasure of spending my Saturday at New Rochelle High School this weekend for the American Debate League tournament. And I'm so proud of all of our students and for our district for hosting this phenomenal event featuring students from the tri-state area. Hundreds of students were there. It was so welcoming and warm to be there and to see our students actively battling each other in these debates about current events, topics of high interest. They truly are global change makers, and I'm so grateful for all of the teachers and staff, including our security staff and our custodial staff, for being there to make it such a memorable event. And so that's really it. Debate changes lives, and it's an incredible skill set that our young students are honing in on and building their confidence and their language skills, social studies. It was phenomenal and very, very moving and inspiring. And I'm hoping that we can see debate across all grades in our district, even starting at earlier grades.
And Ms. Pelosi?
I can actually just say ditto and be done for tonight. Isn't everyone glad?
Any other of my colleagues? No? All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda is our superintendent's update. Dr. Reynolds, I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good evening to our board trustees. Good evening to the members of our community in the audience, and for those of you who are watching us either in real time or later on at your convenience. Good evening. I would like to start off by just mentioning that our Last month, the 4th and 5th grade Kaleidoscope program showcased their research using the scientific method at the Kaleidoscope Science Expo at the Daniel Webster School. The Kaleidoscope program is an enrichment language arts and mathematics program for 4th and 5th grade students throughout the district. Students receive instruction in all content areas as a self-contained unit while also taking part in school-wide activities. Emphasis is on the development of high-level thinking skills, guiding students in the creation of unique learning projects, and recognizing the interrelated nature of all knowledge. The expo was a culmination of a 6-week unit of study on the scientific method, when students chose a wide range of topics of research, and there were 50 students who participated with poster board presentations on display, supported by a 10-minute verbal defense of their research. And their investigations included topics such as magnetism, mold, melting points, and air pressure. At Albert Leonard Middle School on Friday, February 15th, over 400 people gathered to see the winter cabaret of the school's musical theater club. With the theme, Showbiz Goes Hollywood, the night started with a performance of Cabaret, the first of more than 25 songs from movie musicals that included I Feel Pretty, that was a song just for me, they were singing, just for me, from West Side Story, One Day More from Les Miserables, and We Go Together from Grease. Of course, I'm Just Ken from the Barbie movie was a big hit. The production involved about 80 students from all grades, either performing or as members of the crew, and was the first of 3 performances that Showbiz Kids do during the year. Moving towards New Rochelle High School, the high school science research program has again been recognized for its exceptional student researchers. The science research program is a 3-year program that allows students to conduct independent scientific research. The program enables students to develop their scientific skills and gives them an edge in college applications. Students can choose to enroll into the science research program or to try out for it in the 9th grade. At the recent Westchester Rockland Junior Science and Humanities Symposium, several New Rochelle High School seniors earned top honors and spots in the state-level competition in Albany. 2 students placed second in their categories, Alpha Jallo for his work in theoretical physics research entitled A Study of the Penrose Process on Stars Using the Hartle-Thorne Metric, and Lucy Casanova for her work entitled, listen to this, Signal Peptides, Par A and Par B play a role in cell length in Leptospira biflexa. Does anybody know what that means? Okay. Well, this is what is being produced at our high school, ladies and gentlemen. Both earned spots in the state-level competition in Albany. Also standing out and capturing a spot at the state contest was Imad Uzun, who secured 4th place for his mathematical research. Al-Shiba Zia won 5th place at the regional section for her research on first-generation students, and Sasha Arbetter placed 3rd in the local division for her research on the potential impacts of American policy on citizen mental health. New Rochelle High School's Model UN sponsored a team of 25 New Rochelle High School students who participated in the 23rd Annual Boston University Model United Nations Conference last month. They joined about 2,000 delegates from around the world. In advance of the Model UN Conference, students are assigned a country and a committee and must prepare to present a position paper, role play how the country would handle that committee, amongst other activities. They meet with the committees in which students from other schools are representing multiple countries and work together to solve the issue at hand. At the end of the weekend, a resolution is approved and passed by the committee and the moderating board. 2 New Rochelle students came away with top honors from the 3-day conference, and junior Mike Arriaga winning Best Position Paper and senior Imad Uzun receiving a verbal commendation. The New Rochelle Model UN members participated in a variety of committees, engaging in debates to get their resolution passed. Mike argued for a Human Rights Council representing Burkina Faso, and Imad argued for a Commonwealth of Nations representing Togo. Other students represented a range of countries and took positions on topics such as the World Vegetable Center, the World Bank Group, and UNESCO. And finally, at the high school, two New Rochelle High School seniors have been named finalists in the 2024 National Merit Scholarship Program, putting them among the top 1% of students in the nation. More than 1.3 million juniors in about 21,000 high schools entered the 2024 Merit Scholarship Program. Eileen Weisner and Veronica Yu entered the National Merit Scholarship Program by taking the 2022 preliminary SAT. They were named semifinalists in September and cleared the hurdle to finalist status this month by demonstrating through distinguished performance high potential for future academic accomplishment. The two now go on to compete for 7,280 merit scholarships worth nearly $28 million. Veronica will be attending Harvard and plans to study either mechanical or biomedical engineering. She is a co-president of the Math Honor Society, vice president of the Tri-M Music Honor Society, vice president of the Garden Club, and a member of the Computer Science Honor Society. She's a varsity tennis player and will be playing the violin in the pit for this year's musical production of Something Rotten. Eileen is not sure where she wants to go to college, but plans to study history. She is the president of the book club, the vice president of the National Honor Society, and a member of the Envirothon and Social Studies Honor Society. She has played on the school's tennis, softball, and bowling teams. And I would be remiss if I didn't join in with my colleagues in stating I would like to celebrate both our boys and our girls Huguenot basketball team for their victorious season this year. Please. This has been a historic year where both boy and girl team from the same school district made it to the championships. While we were not victorious in the contest, they must be celebrated. And I'm going to look directly in the eyes of any of our students at the high school who are watching. Regardless of how the game turned out, we need to celebrate all of our players because you can't be in the game to lose it. You must be in the game to lose it, right? So we lost the game, but that's not the end of us. You're going to be hearing more about us next year. So I want to congratulate all of our players, our coaches in this historic year, and thank you very much for all that you bring to us because it was great to see the community come together, not just to celebrate the great academics that we get here in the New Rochelle School District, but also to show our athletic prowess and to be celebrated in a different venue. So thank you very much for that. And with that, President Iannuzzi, I cede the mic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reynolds. Next up on the agenda are our discussion items, and first up is our Barnard School presentation. So Dr. Reynolds, if you want to start introductions, and then board members, if we can go down to the front row. Don't forget your microphones.
So I'll sit here as we start our process in coming down to be audience members also for this presentation. This evening we have the pleasure of sitting in the Henry Barnard School, which is the beginning point and the gem of our district. You know, having been an elementary educator for my entire teaching career, this place is near and dear to my heart because it teaches the future of our students who are going to propel beyond the hallowed halls of the New Rochelle School District. So we are here at Barnard School with our principal, the effervescent, and there's a story behind the tie, the effervescent Shelley Owens, who's going to lead us down a pathway of discovery as it relates to our youngest learners in the district. And I am looking forward to taking this walk with you because this is where the magic begins. So with that, I'll turn it over to Principal Owens.
You know, it doesn't matter how much you prepare for something. It's these moments when you really think to yourself, wow, this is really coming true and it's happening. On a side note, while we're waiting for Dr. Reynolds, this is in honor of my administrative colleagues who passed instead of passing the torch, they passed the tie. So to anyone out there, thank you. I'm going to pass it on so you'll see it with some other colleagues moving on. That's how we are. We are a community of colleagues, so. Yeah. By the way, thank you. Thank you. Also, while we're waiting, we would love to have mystery readers come in and read. This is not a plug. This is just an open door invitation. This is not a plug. The doors are always open to the community, to everyone. We've had some beautiful visitors. We have some coming. The goal of mystery readers, and I'm literally off script right now, but the goal of mystery readers is to really bring the community into the school building and form connections. I believe very strongly in that. I want the children to see that when they walk out of this building, they are part of a larger community. They are part of a city. And though they are 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, they have voices outside of the community. And that is something that I can't always facilitate out of the building, but I can bring everyone in who will have us, so the doors are always open to you, okay? Just wanted to put that out there, okay? All right, now, I think I need the grace of a moment because even though this is my clicker, I never use it. Good evening, President Iannuzzi, Vice President Barrios Brooks, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds and cabinet, district staff, and community members. Thank you for joining us tonight. Each year brings us new hopes and aspirations for a beautiful Barnard filled with love and learning. One that welcomes and nurtures the beauty and promise that each child brings to us every morning. And Mr. Cohen's back there, and Mr. Jerome, he's out there with me every morning, and we're cold and wet, and the music's playing, but it's a labor of love, and we're all there every morning welcoming the children. So that's who we are, okay? And that's a plug, that's us, okay? I start out by thanking my co-pilot, Ms. Eiffel. Thank you for your constant support and collaboration every single day. I am honored to work with you every day, and I'm proud of our collective work in service of all of our children, because we are the city's children. We are the city, okay? To my colleagues back there on Zoom, asleep, getting ready for tomorrow morning, the custodial staff, to the lunchroom, to everyone who takes their time and gives a little love every day, thank you. Just thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you. The only people we won't see today that I'm saying thank you to, and I'm off script yet again, are the little people. They are not going to be here tonight because they should be in bed. I hope you're in bed. I hope you're in bed. I hope you're in bed, okay? And because I'm realizing that they should be in bed, okay? So I go back to my colleagues and say thank you, okay? I know that we manage temper tantrums, tears, hugs, smiles, joy, and learning, and we do it because we care about the children whose parents send their joy to us every day, without question and without fail, and we take that seriously, almost too seriously, but very, very seriously. Today, I'd like to share a snapshot of our work at Barnard. We understand that our work is full of approximations and trying as we go. We'll look a little at our culturally responsive and sustaining principle 1, creating a welcoming and affirming environment. I'll then share a little about our reading and phonics initiative, followed by a few clips of our BATS performing. And then I'll end the evening celebrating our tenure recipients. Barnard's mission and vision are in alignment with the district's mission and vision. Barnard looks to nurture and the development of the whole child and cultivate a lifelong learning experience with responsive instruction that supports their journey. Now, this is a fun slide. This slide is intended to show the beautiful mix of students we have here. We're a magnet school and we accept children in pre-K, and we keep them, most of them, some of them, until 2nd grade. From the time they arrive, we celebrate and honor them for who they are. By celebrating their identity, we empower them to see themselves as individuals, but also as part of a larger community, which also goes back to the mystery reader and the notion of exploring the community. But also that they're cultivating friendships where some of these children won't see each other again until either middle school or high school, but they remember each other because of their time here at Barnard. New York State and the City School District of New Rochelle has adopted the culturally responsive and sustaining education principle for all students. It is a key priority for the district and a cornerstone for our work here at Barnard School. Now let's get to it, the little people, okay? We value our children and want them to know we take their needs seriously and do not shy away from supporting them whenever they need it. One morning during arrival, Mark was there, Jerome was there, Diego was there. Zoe had a hard time getting out of the car. I didn't know what was wrong with her. I didn't have a clue. She'd had a rough morning, and it took a little coaxing to get her out. When she got out, we started walking, and I thought about how I could change the trajectory of her day and asked if there was a word that could or would make her feel better. I just asked her for a feel-good word. There were no parameters to the word. It just had to be a thought, a word, just something. You know those desperate moments when you're like, anything, just give me something. Just come on, let's go, I'm with you. Okay? The only thing I asked for was that the word had to be something that I could share with everyone. That was it. Just something that would help you, that I could share. Maybe it would help someone else feel better. I don't remember to this moment, it's been over a year, what that word was. But I remember that Zoe hugged me, smiled at me, headed up to class, and the feel-good word took on a life of its own. It has morphed into words and thoughts that have come to us some mornings, not every morning. There have been many mornings when there have been so many words and ideas that I've sent children into the office. Ms. Owens, I have a feel-good word. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's too many. And you'll see an example of me sending the children in because I think Aniki gave me the word marvelous, and I said, tell Miss Emma. So Miss Emma wrote it, and it landed on the feel-good board in my office. Again, it was shared with everyone. Last year, we had a positivity wall, which is now our affirmation wall. I don't know if you've seen it, but you walked right past it when you were coming out of the library. And there is a space that we are now cherishing and showing children that tools can help them learn and grow and guide themselves and ground themselves in positive thoughts and beliefs about themselves. Words are powerful, but even at this level, I want you to remember that a picture is worth 1,000 words to a 4-year-old. Okay? We'll take those two. Okay. Our community board out front has become our affirmation wall, consisting of mirrors and affirmations. It's been a space where we remind ourselves of positive things by saying them in the mirror. We know that what we say to ourselves matters. On the wall are various statements such as, I choose to have a great day. I am special. I am caring. I am smart. I am loved. The goal of the board has been for it to be another tool, like I said, for us to use when thinking about ourselves and one another. Now, a beautiful relationship emerged at the affirmation wall between Ezra and Ms. Eiffel. You have to see this. Once we started talking about the wall and sharing, I would see Ezra go by, and he would look at himself in the mirror. And then one day, was like, where's Miss Eiffel? Miss Eiffel and Ezra were meeting at the affirmation wall. He started reading some of those affirmations with Miss Eiffel, and we watched it happen. Now you're going to see a little clip. Uh-oh. Trevor. Trevor. I don't know if you'll see it or not, but okay. Now, this one was taped, and I think Ezra was like, really, the camera? But I am smart. Now, the hard part about having an affirmation wall is you're not there when they're all doing those things, right? It's those little moments that you capture, and you try not to videotape them because they don't feel true sometimes. But that was we intruded in their moment. We were totally nosy, but that's okay. I needed for you to see that, right? Ezra's 5. If he knows nothing else, he knows that those mirrors are there. He knows that he's important and he's smart, and he knows he's got a friend in Miss Eiffel forever. Uh-oh. One more time, Trevor. One more time? Okay. Okay. On the academic front, we have thought long and hard about what we've needed to support our learners. We know that once children feel safe and that they belong, they're able to attend to the work in front of them. This journey of learning is one I'd like to share with everyone. When I first got to Henry Barnard, we engaged in a learning walk. The exercise helped us focus our attention on reading through the lens of instructional coherence. During the 2000, I think I should be asleep. I hope you guys are asleep. During the 2022-2023 school year, each school participated in a learning walk. The goal of the learning walk was to visit each school and help provide feedback relative to a school's problem of practice. The teachers in kindergarten through 2nd grade shared that they felt their students weren't acquiring phonics and word analysis understandings. They also suggested that the students weren't transferring them into their independent reading. As a result, reading progress seemed inconsistent. Inconsistent results meant we had to look deeper at what we were doing and what we wanted from the students, knowing that this is the time where our children are learning to read. Feedback from our colleagues during the walk corroborated what we thought, so we took the charge and started making long and short-term decisions about our next steps. When thinking about what we needed to do, we had to think about how we did it. We were going to do it. Instructional coherence became my top priority. We asked questions of one another, thinking about what we did in the past and how it worked or didn't work, and how we had to refine our thinking to ensure all of our resources were aligned to what we needed. By aligning the arrows, management and operational processes, protocols, and procedures, we knew we had to support the instruction. Everything we did had to support teaching and learning. We realized the intentionality had to be inclusive of all voices, and we had to pivot in the same direction, and we had to make some decisions. So what did we do? What decisions did we make? We took all of our standards and curricular documents and aligned them to each month. We matched the social studies and science to our documents, our curricular documents, leaving only social emotional learning, phonemic awareness, and phonics blank. So this is just an example of one of ours. The bottom rows, if you could imagine, they were blank, knowing that we had to go back into those spaces. By seeing the big picture, all resources, time and money, went into supporting a curricular theme, topic, or goal. This big picture was the beginning of lining up the arrows. We adopted the literacy continuum, a Fountas and Pinnell resource, and we worked with Christina Seeley to help with our guided reading at various levels. We thought a lot about transference, and we grounded all of this work in the same tools to make sure that we had everything going in the same direction. So we made sure that the curriculum showed us where we needed to go. We had a tool that we could use all together, and then we looked at the bigger part, the phonemic awareness and the phonics. Remembering that problem of practice, remembering that the problem of practice discussed the acquisition of phonics and word analysis understandings, we kept going. Pre-kindergarten through second grades adopted the Hegarty Phonemic Awareness Program that explicitly taught the manipulation of sounds through rhyming, phonemic isolation, blending, isolating final and medial phonemes, segmenting, adding phonemes, deleting phonemes, and substituting phonemes. That's just a lot of manipulating of sounds. That's really what it is. We also realized that we needed to think about our phonics program. So we had grade levels create, in the past, grade levels had created their own materials, and we were using the Teachers College Phonics while others were using Foundations. Each program was great on its own, but took us back to the inconsistent progress piece that we were trying to deal with. We collected all of the things that we felt we needed in a phonics program and brought it to the table. This chart hangs, the middle chart, hangs behind my door. It's the artifact that remains after our brainstorming session where we listed all of the things we wanted in a phonics program, our starting place. We vetted 3 programs, looked at some of the work being done through the letters learning cohort, and decided to try the 95% phonics program. We piloted the program, kindergarten through second grades, in October of 2023. We spent the month of September learning the program and navigating the new curriculum. The non-negotiables were to use the program with fidelity and to stick to the timing of the program. So if you felt you needed more, don't just stick with the program. Let's try it out. Okay, we leveraged our instructional facilitator, Mrs. Silverman, as a resource to help us with everything from prepping the materials to just coaching us through the lessons. And now, as we're entering our 5th month with the program, we're starting to see some positive results. There are 2 parts to this adoption. Not only were we to look at the program relative to the problem of practice, we looked at the data to inform our instruction. Our PLCs have been spaces where we could analyze the work and see strengths and needs of improvement. It would help us determine if our journey of coherence was working. The information on the left is from a kindergarten PLC, where a teacher provided feedback about her grade level colleagues' data. On the right, that's the actual data. Each row of data on the right symbolizing a child, each column representing a subdomain of the phonics program. What we ask the teachers to do really is to just give some look at the assessment and think about the things the success criteria. What are the things that the children were having success with? What were the challenges? And what kinds of feedback could you give to your colleagues? Now, the teachers didn't know whose work they had, but they caught on. And if you can see on the bottom, the teacher wrote, "You ladies rock." I'm like, how'd you know that was who it was? But that's how much of a community we are. Everyone, we support one another, okay? So this was the 95% data, but we also looked at the STAR data. I'll show that to you. Okay. Our 95% phonics program started in October. Our STAR data now has shown us great gains, especially in kindergarten. There was a slight decrease in the first grade data, but we know who the children are and we're addressing their needs. Continuous improvement and instructional coherence have gone hand in hand for us, and we can't wait to see what the spring's results will yield. Teacher colleagues weighed in on the program and were able to share how they felt. Oh, this was fun. We heard the good, the bad, the boring, the ugly, the great, the pretty, and the complimentary proud moments that were happening with the program. But in the end, the staff decided that we should continue with the program because it met many of the things that we needed and wanted in the program. Teachers also commented that they saw a transference in their writing, which just took us right back to the problem of practice. And the children were using what they learned in phonics and taking it into their writing. So it was going into the reading and it was going into the writing. In reading class, Ms. P shared that the children were sharing what they learned in her smaller reading setting. Though it was rough, most found a reason to continue into next year. So we're going with this program. And we're going to keep going and hone in on all of the pieces until we get it exactly right or where we need for it to be, okay? We're also going to look at some vertical work. We'll look at some intervention work, but we're all in it together, okay? All right, this is the fun part, okay? My friends are not here tonight. We were going to have a performance for you, but I need them in bed. I think I said that already. But I do want to stop here and say that we do share a lot. I want to stop and also thank the Cobra Performing Arts, Dee Bailey, Christina Malagiero, Judy Badillo, Martha Meza, Nick Foy, Jean Jacobson, everyone who's been involved in the extended learning program after school. We know that the days are long, but we appreciate the time and energy that you've put into the children at the end of the days. These are two clips that I'm going to share with you. The first one on the left is first grade drumming. After their extended learning program, the first part of it has been math. The other part of it has been the Cobra Performing Arts, where they learn drumming. I'll say no more, see for yourself. And so that was percussion. On the right, they were learning hip hop. These are first graders on the left, second graders on the right, and then I'll talk a little bit about the Barnard historians. So here we go. Okay, I don't know that I could do that. The children started out not even holding, they didn't even hold, they were holding pipe cleaners. I think Judy said, I think they're gonna hold pipe cleaners. They literally, this was after the 5th or 6th class of 30 minutes. So it's been a beautiful thing to watch them grow, and it's interesting to see them in concert with one another. And I have plenty more to show, but time is of the essence. The video on the right are second graders doing some hip hop dancing. I think this was the second class. The personalities that pop out during these moments are amazing. I also want to stop here. I don't have a picture, but for those of you who attended the WAPC, the Black History Month event, I want to say thank you to Christina and Dee for their work with the Barnard historians. I was incredibly proud of them. They shared Black history facts as different people, and just thank you. Just thank you. So this is a little snapshot of us. It doesn't encapsulate the entire day, but if it can just give you 5 minutes of the love, that's really, then my goal has been met, okay? But again, I don't do this alone. We don't do this alone. So we do want to take a moment to say thank you to Milena, Melissa, Misha, and Diego. They have been awarded their tenure, but I just want to say just a few words about each one. and I didn't write this down because this is coming from my heart. Okay, I'm going to close this first. Okay. Oh, Milena, thank you. Milena works with the pre-K children, and it's seamless, it's loving, it's intentional, and it's thoughtful, period. The kids know it, and I don't know if there's anything that the kids can't do because she has empowered them to do it all. That's it. Hard stop. Thank you, Milena. Come on up. Do you want it? Oh, we have flowers for you for later, okay? Melissa Head is a reading specialist, and she really is a specialist. I don't know of a morning that I haven't had an email from her where she pushes my thinking. And that's what you want. You want people who push your thinking and don't settle for just what it is. Like, there's more out there. And Melissa, from the minute I met her, was always thinking about how any and everything could help, but in a very intentional way. You know, Melissa, thank you for the time and the intentionality as well. Because Melissa works with children who always, when we talk about what they need, teachers always say they need more, and we're like, wait, you don't need more, you need more. The more may not be what they may need something a little tailored, right? You can't have everything. Maybe what you need is just a little bit of a tailoring of what you have. And Melissa's on board and is always willing to have those conversations with everyone about that. So Melissa, thank you, and congratulations. Okay. Misha is a new mommy of number 2, which I wouldn't expect her to be here, but Misha has been, and it continues to be, an asset to the building. She is a building-wide speech and language pathologist, but Misha knows her stuff, and the children learn with her, and they learn because they know that she cares, and her expertise is, she hones in on what they need. It's not just a speech session, it's a targeted speech session based on what the children need. And to that end, the children are growing. And we'll take an inch, we'll take a centimeter, and we'll take a mile. Misha helps them move, period. So I don't know if you can see me, Misha, but thank you, Misha. Okay. Now, Diego. We're all laughing because Diego is one of our bilingual he is one of our school psychologists. Diego, sometimes you feel like Diego's the smartest person in the room and you're glad to be there, right? And sometimes Diego is the smartest person in the room and you're glad to be there, right? But you wouldn't know that because Diego he brings you into the conversations about children and what's best for them. It's never about what's best for Diego. Diego runs to the fire when everyone's running away from the fire, right? Because it matters. Diego is also moving on to a position at the district level. We're going to miss him terribly, but he's coming back because we're going to have him as a mystery reader, and we might call him when we want to just have very serious and important conversations about teaching, learning, growing, and guiding. So thank you, Diego, and congratulations. On that note, thank you. I hope that you have seen a little bit of the sunshine. I hope you didn't get any sunburn, but I hope you feel the warmth and the toast of the air that's coming in through the atmosphere and headed towards us. So thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Ms. Brooks?
Thank you, Ms. Owens, always for welcoming us into this special school. I miss the little people. I'm glad they're sleeping.
I hope so, too.
I first, I guess, wanted to comment on just the general warmth and the supportiveness you can feel. Congratulations to the teachers who received tenure and other staff members, and that's what really makes Barnard such a special place. I did have a question to get down to the nitty-gritty numbers piece on the STAR data, and I wondered if I assume in some ways, if you would go back to that slide, the two bars are comparing two different cohorts.
Yes.
And so, actually, if you do them, it's a little hard to do, but if you actually looked at how far you brought the K kids from winter 23 and the red bar for winter 2024, if you actually lined them up, knowing that there's probably some kids who left and came, but just as a cohort, then actually there's only good news on this slide in terms of the progress that was made. So I just want to both offer that might be a way to think about this data, is really following the cohorts through, as opposed to, really comparing apples and oranges in terms of the kids that were in kindergarten last year versus the kids that are in kindergarten this year.
Yes.
And, I think, to me, one, it's really important that we hold ourselves accountable as we're trying out new things to see what works. And to me, this really is evidence that what you did worked. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Doesn't always work that way.
No.
And I guess I want to give all of our school leaders permission to try things. And if it doesn't work, that's also valuable information. So I'm glad it did in this
Thank
case
you.
for these kids, but also I'm really, and this is consistent with what we saw at our last board meeting, this culture of really trying new things and trying to move the needle. And I also want to say that, this looks really dry because it's like data and numbers and charts, but these are the years when kids, if they can get over the hump and comfortable in reading, can become lovers of reading.
Yes.
And I want to just highlight how important, what this progress can mean to a child's life in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, when they're starting to see, is this something that I'm going to be able to do with a lot of hard work, or is it going to come easier to me over time? That opens up, and I know Ms. Bavos is probably going to talk about this, the ability to go visit new worlds when you read books and when you read magazines and when you read things. And so even though this looks like probably the dullest slide you could ever imagine, when I think about what that actually could mean for the children who you have really given them a tool to do it more, that's what this work is about. But in order for us to measure ourselves, we need this slide as well. So thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
And I would love to see cohorts kind of followed over time, just to really be able to see that kind of progress. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And yes, we were thinking about that. If we looked vertically, we could see growth, because we're really talking, the first graders are last year's kindergartners, so we could look that way. So we could look at it in two ways and see, either way, it looks good to us, and it feels like we're on a positive trajectory, and it goes back to why we're doing this in the first place. We want to see consistent gains across the boards with the reading and the writing, and we're starting to see it now. And to your point, yes, because where we are, we as a school are charged with helping children learn to read so that they can read to learn. And in my mind, our charge is to send them out as capable and ready to learn, to read to learn as possible, and even shift a little and have them reading to learn. They're doing both, but we want to make sure that we're setting the underpinnings in a solid way, as solid as possible. And so thank you for the permission for that, because it's challenging when you're bringing everyone on.
I also want to say Happy Women's History Month. I always love seeing two women leaders in a school. And because there was a leap year this year, I actually joked that February 29th was Black Women's History Month, because you don't normally have a February 29th, and it's kind of both. So I also wanted to just note Happy Women's History Month, and thank you both of you for your leadership.
Thank you. It's teamwork.
Ms. Owens, I'm sorry, before we continue, did you want to hand those out? Or
I know. Can you want?
before anyone, I don't want to make sure no one leaves before.
Melena,
Yeah, I
Diego,
apologize for
Melissa.
interrupting.
I know. We were going to get chocolate for you, but we figured I should have. Diego attacks the pretzels in the office. I should have. Oh.
Thank you.
We are Team Barnard.
Ms. Pavosa?
First of all, thank you for this presentation, and I will piggyback on what my esteemed colleague, Ms. Brooks, said. The reading is the key. I think coupled with, and also congratulations to all of the teachers who were just tenured, to have lasted 3 or 4 years with the little ones. I, having come out of the secondary unit, say each time, God bless you, God bless you, God bless you.
Right.
Okay, but in the meantime, the affirmation wall, where a child sees a mirror image of himself, herself, themselves, and can bring that positivity to the reading, I think couples into a situation where there has to be progress. And so we can't look just at the academic, we can't look just at the social. The emotional is such a component. Because if you look and say, I am smart, then when you see a smart character in a book, you become that character. If you say, I am important, they know the characters in the book are important. They now make that connection. And so for you and all of your teachers and staff members and psychologists and counselors, kudos for all that you do, and thank you for this presentation.
Thank you. They're my colleagues. Thank you.
I want to say congratulations also on just the trust and the warmth amongst your staff. It's so admirable and so important and such a powerful driver of student learning when staff trust each other enough to give each other feedback and be able to fill out like the note catcher that you have here on display in slide 12, where colleagues can look without judgment, without negativity at each other's data and help think of what's next so that soon we can see on slide 13 that 100% of Barnard students, when they leave here, are at or above benchmark. And I just want to ask you, what are you thinking, just anecdotally, that it will take to help get those numbers up? Because while the data here is so positive and upward trending, we also know there's some students that are performing below benchmark. They're not there yet. They will get there, but they're not there yet. And so what are you thinking of as a collective team that can be done, and how can we support you?
Well, the first thing we need is time. When I actually looked at the data this way, I said, wow, this is from 5 months. We literally started the program in October of 2023, and this data is from January of 2024. So we need time. What we also need is the ability to look at the program. The program isn't the be-all, end-all, but it's a place where we can work together and where we can hone in on the things we continue to need. What I see happening next is, because we rolled it out K2, and we're looking at the data, not just kinder, but we also know that we're going to see upward trends in the first grade data, because this next year will be the second year that the first grade teachers will have tried the program. And by trying it one more year, everyone will get even better at it. And then the third year, the second graders that were first graders will grow into it. So I think time is the first thing. The second thing is that we're drilling down, and we're struggling with the children that are on, we know that they need more. What is more? Is more another thing, or is more something a little more intentional, just being a little clear about what we are doing. So we're in the middle of that, and that's also very murky and muddy and personal and a struggle. So we're trying to navigate a lot of things, but we also feel like we're in a time crunch, because what we want to do is send out 100%. But we also have to manage our expectations too and realize that if we can get close, we'll keep going, you know? So we're looking at it from we're looking at it in a lot of ways. I'm looking at it from a 30,000-mile view down. I look at it from here, I look at it, but I'm also listening to what my colleagues are saying to me. So if they say to me, Shelley, Ixnay on the program A, then we know we have to go back to the drawing board because they are boots on the ground and they have to own it. I have to support them. So they're multi-pronged, but I think it'll start with time and some intentional looking at the program and what it is giving us and where we can come away from it or maybe use it even more, leveraging it, but learning it first so we can take full advantage of it. And then seeing if it doesn't meet our needs in certain spaces where we can use our professional judgment and our colleagues' expertise to support those spots. So I see a lot of that happening. Thank you.
I'll be very quick. Just wanted to say that I'm not the professional in the room, not a school psychologist, but I do think that it's really helpful to have students see themselves and say positive things from a young age. And we always talk about the mental health of our students. And I know nationally people focus on the older students, but to start at a small age when they can physically see it, they have someone to walk them through the activity and reiterate it day after day after day, helps them by the time they get to high school. It makes it easier for our school psychologists at the older grades. So thank you for starting that at such a young age.
Thank you. It's interesting because some of the children are still in the id, the ego stage. They're like, what do you mean myself? It's like, yes, you and everyone around you. So we're pulling some children out of thinking about just themselves too. So it's a journey. It's a journey, but thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Ms. Owens, and congratulations to the tenure recipients. And thank you to their colleagues who are here, and thank you everyone who's here this evening. I just have a few questions. One is about the journey of instructional coherent slide. I just want to confirm that the name of the phonics group is 95% group.
Yes.
And what do you account for the success of the program? And are the other K-2 schools in the district using the 95% group?
The first part of the question is,
What do you count? Why do you think it's so successful here? What do you count?
because it's not my decision, it's our decision. It has never been just my decision. Once we had the learning walk and we realized that this was a big thing that we had to address, I thought long and hard about how to bring some change in. We knew we had to pivot, but I couldn't do it by myself. I'm not in 15 rooms every minute of every day. I had to bring the stakeholders in. I had to bring the teachers in. I had to ask questions. I asked everyone to share with their grade level leaders what they thought we needed in a comprehensive program that would help all children. They talked to each other. The grade level leaders brought the information in. We put that list up that still is on the back of my door, and then we started, it was almost like action research. We started looking at different programs. Again, I'm not saying one program solves every problem, right? I'm not advocating for one program. That was the journey we went on based on what we felt our biggest need was based on the problem of practice, so just going backwards. I know that there are some other schools that are, either, I don't want to say what they're completely doing. I know there's some schools I'm getting text messages. Some people are dipping in, some people are trying things. I know that we went in, we just dove in. And the connection between the letters work, because teachers are in the middle of the letters, district-wide letters initiative. One of the programs that the letters work talked about and used as a reference was the 95% phonics. So it was a beautiful tie-in to what we were already doing, because we wanted to make sure, again, that we were lining the arrows up and not just picking something out of the sky over there. That's an easy thing to do, but a dangerous thing if that's what you're constantly doing. So we wanted to be very clear and intentional. So the first part, the teachers, and in the end, I didn't make the decision. I mean, we had to make a decision because the budgets are closing. We had to think about what we're doing next. But I listened to every grade level. I listened to the teachers tell me, what do you think? And I listened. what is it Keith Watkins said? 2 ears and 1 mouth. I listened to everyone, and we made some decisions based on what we thought would be the next best thing to do. And the next best thing was to keep going. So we're clearly on a good path. And if we find that after we try this a little more and we keep going, that it's still not what we need, then we will talk about it together and pivot again. But we're going to do it in service of what the children need constantly. Okay, and we send home the parent information every week. So there's a parent component as well. So everyone's on board with that. So we're there.
Great. And the Barnard Bats are a beautiful mix. They certainly are.
We're trying.
And my question is, can you just refresh our memory about the enrollment process or how students are enrolled into Barnard School?
So children are, they come into the school as either a UPK child or a Magnet 4-year student. So you come in as either a UPK 1-year student or a Magnet 4-year student in UPK. After your pre-K year is over, if you're a UPK child, you will then go to kindergarten at your home school, unless you apply for the Magnet Lottery for kindergarten. If you are a Magnet 4-year child, you matriculate through Barnard, starting at kindergarten in the full day program until 2nd grade, and then we send you off to your school for 3rd grade around the district. But families that are in UPK, if they are interested in staying at Barnard, they will apply for the Magnet Lottery, and it's happening right now, I believe. We're applying. Everyone is applying now, so I'm getting a lot of phone calls and emails. Miss Owens, I don't know. But that's what usually happens. And then each year, we will then, depending on our numbers, we'll take in more children from the Magnet Lottery to fill in the children if we don't have children who stay with us for a variety of reasons. So we then take those children in that are in the lottery and on the wait list to fill in and keep our building full of love. So that's how it works.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Ross?
Well, first of all, thank you for the time and the thoughtfulness for putting together this presentation.
Thank you.
And congratulations to all the teachers that received tenure. I don't really have a question, it's more of a thought, which is kind of a compilation of some of the things my colleagues have said. But one of the things I've always thought of with Barnard is you have, and for our district, is that we have a very small audience of this group of early learners, of where you really do have the opportunity to try new things, whether it's different ways of using phonics, teaching, et cetera, and really building those best practices for the rest of the district to really learn from. And I think it's always kind of been that way, and love to kind of continue to see more of that. And our goal should, for all of our entire district, is all of our kids should be at grade level, but it's great to kind of see the progress, and I look forward to seeing that sort of year over year as well.
Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Owens. One, I just want to say I'm actually really excited. I will be here Friday as a mystery reader. I'm rereading Strega Nona to the kids. So I'm very excited about that.
You know what's, I'm sorry, you know what's more exciting is to know what's coming and not say anything, and then the kids are like, oh my gosh, who's that? There's something very lovely to it. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Your question.
So I have a procedural question and then more of an overarching statement, probably more for Dr. Reynolds.
Okay.
But Barnard, unique school, pre-K through 2. It's a transportation school. It's not a neighborhood school, and you get kids from all over the district. And you have a unique perspective of being a former assistant principal at Columbus, where you got a lot of these kids transitioning from 2nd to 3rd grade. So, we see all the amazing work that's happening here, and my question is, how is that transition to their neighborhood schools? What does the continuity of education look like? How does that work with you and the other principals and making sure the kids are getting their services needed?
This tie is an example of that. We're always talking to one another about what the best practices are that we're using in the buildings. I think I'm ahead of the curve with the phonics because there was a clear need that came out of our learning walk. And it just happened, it bubbled up as I was coming in, so it was the perfect, I could seize the moment. What I've gathered from this new role is that we are not silos, okay? What I do here is something that if it can be shared and transferred, I have colleagues that will ask questions just as I will ask of them. You know, what do you do? How do you do this? And so I'm getting a lot of emails now about this program, and I'm sharing a lot with them because we also want, whatever I'm doing here, I want to make sure that if they decide that it's something that we want to do, and if it's something that they can do, that there's a clear line through. So this program will support, I believe, up to 3rd or 4th grade. So that's a beautiful line for any school who would want to, you know, adopt the program. I'm also thinking about the transference of the skills from the children going, with our kids going to the other schools. So like Hegarty is a program that many of the other schools are using. And a lot of it, again, isn't about the program itself. It's about the best practices that undergird the work, that makes the work even stronger. So the program isn't the be-all, end-all. It's the best practices behind it. So we share a lot, but we're all a little different in a lot of ways. So we take what helps us, and we'll go in that direction. So I have been getting emails, and people are asking a lot of questions, but then I think they then have to think about what their buildings need and the best way to address what their children and families need, and then they make those decisions that way.
So that kind of teed up my next comment for Dr. Reynolds is, you know, I don't know if we actually have seen data that shows like what a student at Barnard goes through. So if they graduate here at if they move up here at 2nd grade, what do their STAR assessments look like in 4th, 5th grade? Are there decreases or increases? And if there are decreases, there's obviously something missing going to their neighborhood schools. So does it make sense? Do we look at Barnard as a potential K-5 school then? So I'm just throwing stuff out there at you, so you don't have to make any comments to anything.
Okay.
This is just me thinking in my head, but I would be interested to see what a journey of a Barnard student looks like through K-12. What is that comparison to a student that stays at their neighborhood school the entire time?
I can speak a little to that, and I can speak only to my experience as a Columbus assistant principal. I could always tell which children were Barnard children. I could always tell by far the children coming into kindergarten, and I could always tell which children came out of Barnard 2nd grade. I could always tell by far. I think the continuity of instruction in the programming and you know, the delivery of the best practices was clear, and you could see by the way children interacted, even with text, that they were being exposed to those they were having those types of conversations here at Barnard. So I could tell, just by looking at the dials, you could tell in kindergarten when we were getting the pre-K children, and I could see which children were cutting. I could see there were some nuances. Again, I don't have metrics, I couldn't tell you, but I could tell you which children were coming from Barnard by far. And those children came well-equipped and ready to go, and I could tell. So I knew, I could see it. I could see it. I personally could see it, yeah. Yes.
So you could see by the academic achievement and by the skill level of the Barnard School, the kids who came from Barnard. So it would be something, whatever's happening in Barnard, maybe that needs, I mean, that's not for me to say, it can happen in all of the schools so that all of our schools, our students would be able to achieve at the same level.
The consistency.
And that's not my call.
No. No, I also think because the Barnard leadership was at the table with the K-5 leadership, there were some you know, you could thread the work across. And in pre-K, you have the learning standards and all the teachers are following them and making sure that the children are ready for kindergarten. But there was you could see the children were presenting as more confident. And I'm not saying the collaborators, I'm not saying that. This is not a them or a Barnard thing. But you could see a level of heft and confidence that the Barnard children were bringing to the table, a level of nuance that they were coming in with in kindergarten and in third grade. And it would happen year after year after year. There was a level of familiarity that the children had with the curriculum and the things that you were doing with them when they were coming in, and it was just clear. It was clear to me at Columbus, to me.
Do you want to say something further? Ms. Bavosa has her hand raised, so I didn't know if you want to.
Just very quickly, I think Mr. Iannuzzi was reading my mind, so ESP might be real. My question just before you spoke was, how do children transition to all of the different schools? Because we have children who are going to go to Davis, Ward, Jefferson, Trinity, Columbus, and so how they acclimate in one particular building might be completely different than how they do. And my question, as well as his, would be, has there been a consideration? This used to be pre-K only. Has there been a consideration over the years for this to become a full elementary? Just a thought. And I know some people will be in favor, some people will be against. I do think that it was brought up at an opportune time, and I think it is something that people are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like to kind of answer some questions with a non-answer. Okay, if that makes sense. So we have not had those conversations with me being superintendent, but there are always conversations, particularly around the creation of budget. What are the possibilities? How can we change some of our current programming that will help to support the budget? But you never want the budget to drive what it is, what you're doing for children, right? So I'm going to back up a little bit and start off with my personal affirmation. I am pretty. Remember I said that earlier, right? So.
Okay.
And I say that to say, what we're hearing here in this data-rich presentation for students in grades who have historically been untested students, where there is not a lot of data, which is why I specifically chose to focus my dissertation on these grades, pre-K through 2. We don't find a whole lot of data that would support practices, that would support changes to programming and things of that nature. So to be in a space where this is just pre-K to 2 and we're talking about data, we're having data-informed conversation, and we are talking about potential changes because now we're starting to see things a little bit differently, that is saturation, that is sustainability, and that is high expectation, right? So saturation, what we're seeing in the practices of our students is that they're being saturated with common vocabulary. So every early elementary teacher knew, even in the days of whole language, even in the days of balanced literacy, you had to sneak some phonics in there somehow. Now we are using common vernacular. We're using a common approach in how we're teaching our children. Here we're seeing that in the data. So I would attest that some of what we're seeing is that common vernacular throughout the building. I would also state, in terms of, I said saturation, I said sustainability. Now we have an opportunity to see whether this program is meeting the needs of our students or if our students are reaching the expectation of the program, right? So we can use the data to inform how that's going to look. What that could potentially mean is, are we meeting the needs of our students in an isolated environment? Or is it something that's going to be able to be replicable throughout the district? So are all of our kindergartens going to pick this up? All of our first grade classrooms pick this up? And it also means that we have to, and I agree with you, look at what the data trends tell us, right? So when we look at our Barnard cohort, as they progress through elementary school, wherever they've gone, as they progress through middle school, as they progress through high school, do we start to see those trends? So you've given us a task, and it's something that we will start to put together as soon as the budget is completed.
No, because it would be interesting to see, like, what percentage of district kaleidoscope kids come from Barnard? What percentage of AP students come from Barnard? And if there's that trend, because that would inform the board. I mean, we have a, that, I was,
Yeah.
But I appreciate you. You know, usually I send Dr. Reynolds my questions in advance, and I didn't this time, so he didn't get, it was more of a surprise, and I apologize for that, but thank you.
And I appreciate these conversations, right? That's why I'm saying I'm going to answer you with a non-answer, because we don't know what that means for Barnard School. No conversations, and I'm going to look at all of my friends in the back who are like wide-eyed. There are no conversations in this moment about changing the configuration of Barnard School. But what we do need to do is look at what best practices are taking place here, how we can replicate that throughout the district, and then see what the potential is for next steps. So I want to thank Shelley and her team for putting together this very thoughtful presentation, but one that is focusing on our students through a new lens, because the practices that are being embedded in our students here, the levels of expectations that we have for our students here, are going to permeate throughout their career. And I will tell you, any expectation you have for a high school student, you can have of a pre-kindergartner if you set up that exam and set up that environment for them. We can have a Socratic method classroom in pre-kindergarten if we establish that expectation and model that behavior. So we're starting those practices here, and I can guarantee you, you're going to see the benefits for that in years to come. So thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
I just have an additional comment in response to what you just said about, you know, replicating these things across the district. I think once we have, you know, good data and we know information and we can understand, we should definitely do that. But I also want to acknowledge that part of experimentation is giving room for individual schools to do things a little differently, to try new things out without doing it over the whole district all at once, so that if it doesn't work, you haven't rolled it out over a whole lot of folks. So I just want to acknowledge a tension between, you know, sharing best practices and having some uniformity on some basic things. I think that's important. But I also do think a lot of what we saw today and what we saw in previous presentations where folks are experimenting locally, we need to not be afraid of having a little bit of difference in given moments so that we can try things out. And the other thing on the longitudinal data that we're talking about, looking at, is thinking about, too, we may be doing things really well in reading and writing, but maybe another approach makes more sense in math. And I would want to look at outcomes not just in reading and math, which is always what we look at with data, but in social studies and science, because I think that, for example, reading results, I would expect that you might have kids that are doing really well in the social sciences and history and other things where reading is such an important skill and writing are such important skills. So I would just want us to be really expansive about what our outcomes are, because if you look at, oh, I just want to see math and reading scores, then the critical thinking and other things that you need to do in other subjects may not be there. And that I want to encourage that experimentation mindset and not assume that it immediately needs to go to scale the minute you see a little bit of success, because I do think sometimes you need to give things a little bit of time to incubate.
I couldn't agree with you more. So please understand that in my response, my promise to you is best practices throughout with individuality of each environment embedded within. So we don't want anyone to lose their identity, and that means our schools.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you, Ms. Owens.
Thanks, Holly.
Have a good night. See you guys tomorrow.
Okay, we're going to get ready to transition to our last presentation for this evening. We are going to continue our conversation as it relates to budget. So this is budget workshop number four. And you know, last week when we spent time together, we talked about, you know, really taking some bite-sized chunks out of our our budget and our budget development so that we have a deeper understanding of what it is that we do on an annual basis. So tonight we're going to be led in the next portion of our conversation by our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations and Administration, Carlos Leal, again joined by our Business Administrator, Ms. Joy Mike. And this evening, we're going to see some information which may look familiar to you. We did listen to the recommendations of board leadership and the trustees. You're going to see some additional numbers to tell a greater story of what it is that we've been discussing so far. And at the end of the conversation, we can answer any questions you may have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, Mr. Leal and Ms. Mike.
Thank you. Good evening. Very similar, we follow the same format as the last presentation. We just made a few updates based on the conversation we had last week, Thursday? Well, Tuesday came quickly. President Iannuzzi, Vice President Mario Brooks, Superintendent Reynolds, if you guys would just give us a few more minutes. I will go through the first few slides, which again, just kind of speak to the totality in terms of our approach. Again, these 6 items continue to come back because we're maintaining our work on the guiding principles and the roadmap. Specifically, we're going to highlight the variables in which we were asked to come back to give a bit more robust in that area. Our 5 priorities continue to maintain and to stay. We had this conversation today with all the district administrators. Again, a focus on our student outcomes, maintaining all staff, making every effort for no layoffs, reduce discretionary spending, which we talked about, leveraging attrition and retirements, and then staying again within the allowable tax cap. In terms of the variables, I'll let Joy speak to those, and you'll notice a change on these next 2 slides.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. And thank you for inviting me back to share with you. This particular slide regarding our variables for budget development, we did do an update at the request of some of the trustees to sort of quantify what these increases look like. So in terms of state aid, according to the governor's proposal, we had a little over 12% increase, which equates to about just over $7 million of additional state aid revenue. I do want to stress that there is still ongoing statewide lobbying regarding foundation aid because at least half of the districts in the state saw a decrease in their foundation aid, and so there are ongoing negotiations regarding this. In addition, our expiring ESSER grant of about $9.7 million that will be going away in the 24-25 school year. Our liability and insurance rate increases are over 20%. That quantifies to an increase of over $1.5 million for the 24-25 budget. In addition, transportation and other contractual renewal increases that are tied to the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, which was 4.12%, is just over $2.1 million. There we go. In addition, additional updates to this variable slide as well. The NYSHIP health insurance plan increases between 9 and 24.9%, depending on if it's an active employee or a retiree, equates to about $3.6 million increase in the 24-25 budget. And the retirement system increases both for ERS, or local retirement system, at 2.1%, TRS for our certified staff at 0.26%, is about $1.36 million increase for 24-25. Obviously, the last bullet remains that we are looking to leverage our reserve to minimize the taxpayer impact. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Leal to talk about our budget approach, refresher, and then I'll be back.
Great, thank you. So again, this is just a recap of the budget allocation providing based enrollment. We start that at our first meeting when we got together, making the adjustments so that the dollars are going to our students. based on student need. District-wide building and department discretionary funds, we asked everyone across the system to initially look at their dollars from the get-go, knowing that we were going to be in a situation where we needed to count again every dollar, every penny, and ensure that it is getting into the right place and in service to our students and our schools. And then the leadership team continues to ask questions, and we continue to go back and forth. Again, today we spent time with principals and all administrators across the system having a conversation, and they also previewed tonight's presentation. Again, going back to our strategic roadmap and our commitment to what we have set out as a system, to align these to the strategic plan, that all new staffing requests and retirement evaluated to maximize student outcomes. All budget requests must be aligned to the strategic plan, which we mentioned again beforehand. When folks came forward with their request, it had to be aligned to the strategic plan, and they had to denote that. Cabinet continues to review. We go back and forth, and there are still some unbudgeted requests that we're sifting through, trying to figure out how can we get to as many asks as possible as we're building this budget. And the unbudgeted facilities requests prioritized by the district leadership, which we talked a little bit more in depth in terms of how can we use some of those reserves to make up some of that. I'll come back to Joy because I believe I spoke to this slide last. No, you spoke to it last time. I can't remember who, but we just keep passing the baton.
I think this one is mine. Okay, so this slide really gives us a picture of our current year budget that was adopted last year and the voters voted upon. You will see that we have revenue and expenditures because those things must be in balance. We can't provide you with a budget with expenses that outweigh the revenues that we have coming in. So in our current year budget, our state aid equates to about 25% of our revenue, and property taxes 70.5%, other revenues a little over 4%. On the expenditure side, you'll see health insurance at 12%, other benefits at 5%, retirement system at 6%. If you look at salary and benefits, it's about 74% of our current year budget, and all other expenses make about 26%. And that's important to just keep in mind as we go forward. Those percentages continue into the 24-25 budget. So the snapshot this evening that we will be sharing with you is related to athletics, co-curricular, student support, transportation, community service, and debt service and transfers. We will have other portions of the budget, I believe March 12th. There's another presentation where we'll have another portion of the pie, if you will. Okay, this first slide is athletics and student support services. It's important to note, and you'll hear this throughout, the initial reductions that were taken when buildings and departments were given their budget allocations. Those initial reductions were over $154,000 for these function areas. In addition, the unbudgeted requests that Mr. Leal spoke to total over $1.5 million. The increases that you'll see in the different function areas are aligned to our collective bargaining agreements or employment contracts. Of course, we are maintaining current staffing, and the budget reflects shifting of some staff from grant funds in our current year into the general fund in 24-25. The overall, there is an increase, not decrease, I apologize for that typo, of 20.7%. So the first area is student support services. You have family and community and My Brother's Keeper, attendance health services, psychological services, pupil personnel, co-curricular, and interscholastic athletics. You will notice in some cases that there is not an adopted budget number displayed as in family community and My Brother's Keeper. Many of those budgets were in grant funds that are being transferred into the general fund for next year. Also of note, you'll see some changes in the psychological services and social work services, again, with some staff moving from grant funds into the general fund. Okay. The next slide is transportation and debt service. Again, in this area, there are initial reductions of over $400,000. Increases in these areas, specifically for the transportation pieces, are aligned to collective bargaining agreements and contracts. Again, we are maintaining current levels of staffing, and we did have actually no significant shifting from grants in this area, with an overall increase of 6.1%. You will note increases in our bond anticipation notes. We have several capital projects that are in various stages of completion, and as we take on different stages, we continue to finance just for the piece that we expect to accomplish within one school year, with the idea that once we complete the project, we will go for longer-term financing. We also have here our energy performance contract financing and transfers for both school lunch and special aid. Overall increase for transportation and debt service is 6.1%. Okay. Actually, I think that's the last slide for me, and I will turn it back over to Mr. Leal.
So those two slides mirror the slides we shared the last time we had some in-depth conversation. So I'll just kind of close out this portion because the remaining slides really speak to the fact that we have another session tomorrow, and then the week after that. And so we'll continue, not tomorrow, next week, and the week after that, and we'll continue this conversation. And then, of course, the stakeholder feedback. We did, again, before tonight, I said I got to go in the email, make sure, are we missing anybody? Are we capturing? So we did respond to some emails today from individuals. And again, our stakeholder feedback is critical, so we continue to ask the community to engage and ask questions and to please join us in this discussion. And this is how they can do that. So we are available for questions, and I can go back to slides if need be.
Thank you, Mr. Leal. Just for the community, the public, next Tuesday, March 12th, we're definitely having a special meeting just on the budget. It will be at New Rochelle High School. It won't be at City Hall. And we'll get the location. The clerk will send all the information this week. But just want to let everyone know that March 12th will be a special meeting.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank you to Mr. Leal and Mr. Mike for walking us through this portion of the budget. Some things that I wanted to just have everybody really reflect on. That 74% of our pie, that is the non-negotiable. That's really what we have to, those are our bills. So if you think about it in terms of your household, that's what you have, those are the bills you have to pay next year, and those aren't changing. The discretionary fund is really how much money I spend on my suit or how much money I spend on my shoes, right? So that 26% or so is really where we have some leverage in talking about whether we're going to buy a new suit next year or not, or whether we are just going to get our shoes polished, right? So that is the conversation that we're holding now as we create this budget. We still have to come to a hard point in our discretionary fund and what it is that we intend to either bring back in service to our children, what we are going to intend to put off for a year in service of our children, and what will that mean to our strategic roadmap? Do we need to extend our strategic roadmap by a year, depending on which items in our unbudgeted items we need to put a hold on until we can afford it? And again, going back to something I said earlier, you never want the budget to direct what it is that you're doing for your children. But at some point, you have to in order to be responsible to our community and responsible to our taxpayer. The other thing that I want to bring to the public's knowledge, and I'm going to be very vague in terms of this communication, I want to formally thank our partners at Fuse, because in order to offset this, this burden to the taxpayer, we are looking at really reorganizing our transportation within the district. And just a very brief synopsis of what we are currently under in our contract. We use one bus for one run in this district. So if your child goes to Columbus School and that bus that picks up your child in the morning drops them off at school, once that drop is done, they go back to the bus yard. So we are currently looking to see what other avenues we have to utilize our buses differently to potentially provide a cost savings that will offset what it is that we'll be looking for next year, while maintaining the intent of our current contract. So that has to be done in conjunction, in partnership with our Federation of United School Employees. And I have to tell you that those conversations are going well. It is under the direction, the involvement, the partnership of our building principals. We are not at a place where we can formally discuss it yet, but I just want to give you an example of how deep we are looking into our normal operations to maximize the savings so that we do not, as an organization, become a burden to our taxpayer. We're really trying to look at every avenue that we have available to us in terms of our discretionary spending or in terms of what's a fixed cost that we can do a little bit differently. So, you know, and I'll give another example for those of you at home. So if you're at home and you know your light bill is a bill that you can't change, you know, do you start thinking about how often you use your light? That's basically what we're doing with our transportation, right? If you want to save money on gas, you know, maybe I just don't drive to the store today, I walk, you know, those types of things. So that's how we're looking at our budget. We're looking at where we can save money so that it does not become a burden to the taxpayer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Ms. Brooks?
This is sort of a big picture question, maybe. Well, I guess it's a statement and then a question. So as I'm looking at these sort of chunks that you're giving us, thank you again for the bite sizes. You know, what I really see is that, you know, recognizing that there's some movement because we're reallocating lines, and so we can't really use those to measure change over time. But as a aggregate, thank you, you know, we can see for the athletics and student support services, that 20.7% increase, really I'm seeing as driven by the move of the school psychologists and social workers from grant funding to the general fund. And that this transportation and debt service increase of about 6% is, you know, kind of given inflation, not too far off. So it feels like we're kind of doing roughly what you would expect. So I guess the question I have, so first of all, thank you for kind of presenting it in that way. It kind of makes sense and telling us, you know, what's driving it and recognizing that the socio-emotional costs of COVID are still here with us. And so I guess I want to just endorse and name that really bringing those individuals into the general fund is something that I recognize is a necessity. You know, our students need it. So I just want to state that, just because you look at the number and you're like, well, 20%. It's like, yeah, our kids are still suffering and hurting and need the support that these individuals are able to provide. But I guess my question is, in the longer term, thinking about how do we think about benchmarking the percentage of our budget that is going to different buckets versus, you know, neighboring districts, for example? Are we spending way more or way less? Or are we kind of in the main on these big buckets? So it's not a request for that immediately, but it is something that would be, I think, useful for the board to understand, like, nope, this is, or no, we're making a significant investment. And maybe the answer is we're making a significant investment because that's consistent with our values and our roadmap, but it would be useful for us to understand, no, these are costs that are going up for everyone, or no, or we've achieved some cost savings for some reason. Just kind of having that information as we're thinking about, especially these kind of shifts, like a 20% increase in a particular bucket.
Thank you very much for that question. We will do some more analysis, but I can tell you in my conversation with my counterparts, particularly with other superintendents, we're all in the same place. All of our fixed costs are pretty comparable for all superintendents in this region. And the addition of moving all of our employees that were hired under ESSER, all of the opportunities for programming and activities and materials for our students that were bought out of ESSER now coming over to the general funds, everybody is faced with that. As a matter of fact, if you are following along in the Journal News, you'll see that there's stories across the region about some school districts saying that they can't afford to move the people over, so they're cutting all of these offerings for the students. we as a district are committed to providing what we can for our students, because we know that the effects of COVID, not only are they not ending, they're increasing, right? So as we're starting to see some long-term social, emotional, some long-term health deficiencies for our students, and we want to be able to address that. But there are some unique situations where we are outpacing other regions as it relates to some of those increases. And we did mention them briefly in our last presentation, but I would like to cover those again if you don't mind. So Carlos, can you talk about our regional increases, our triple hit as it relates to insurance?
So I mentioned last week, Westchester, Putnam, and Rockland County, we all had a conversation with NYSER, the New York State Reciprocal, and all three counties were basically told, we're going to increase your insurance by 20%. And we were all kind of just stunned. And then in addition to that, Westchester County only, if there's a named storm by NOAA, right? We have to upfront $500,000 for the facility, the building itself, and $500,000 for material inside the building, which means, and I can't predict next year's weather, right? But we have to be prepared in the event something like that happens, and that was not part of our thinking moving forward, but now we have to plan for it. And so there's so many of us who are just needing to respond to insurance, the continuous increase of insurance. And if I can say, I really love your question, and the fact that we are now putting things where they're supposed to be, we'd be able to do those kind of comparisons. Because if we did that before, I don't really think you'd get an honest picture, and we'll be able to do that moving forward. So thank you.
Any other of my colleagues? Ms. Ross?
Thank you again for all the work that kind of goes into this. A couple of questions, and then I guess a couple of requests for the next one is, and I know you guys aren't fortune tellers, but the when we think about budgeting, not just for this year, but in the next like 2 or 3 years, I get the feeling that we're going to have to continue to be fiscally prudent, right? So I think that in the prior years, there were a lot of grants that the state and the government, federal government were kind of giving out, whereas now this year not quite as generous as in prior years, and that coming forward that that will probably continue to be the case. So I guess my question is, well, first, is that a true statement? And then second is, how do we continue to kind of future-proof our budget? So I know this year we're saying we're not going to, make any cuts, going forward. I guess, how do we just make sure that within our reserves that we continue to have enough to think about storms, a continued sort of more strict economic environment over the next couple of years? Like, how are we just thinking about that strategically over the next, as we're budgeting this year, but also thinking about the next 2-3 years coming forward?
So if I can start, and then I'm going to ask Joy to jump in. The first part, I believe, is our commitment to look at programming across our system, kind of like the transportation. Where do we find efficiencies? How can we do things better, which then would result in cost savings that we can then carry forward. Then the second is the diversifying of our reserves. And so if Joy can kind of speak briefly to what we approved last year as a community, and then what the plan is moving forward, or the desire to move forward in terms of the reserves, what we did last year.
So at the conclusion of last fiscal year, the board did approve the creation of additional reserves, an insurance reserve, a general liability reserve, that we can utilize going forward to sort of mitigate some of these insurance claims or losses that we can anticipate. But that's sort of a small well, if you will. I think in addition to looking at the programming across the district, we're also going to have to take a more critical eye towards attrition and those retirements that we receive, to evaluate positions going forward so that we are able to sort of keep pace with the revenue that we're receiving. The news around state aid and how that's fluctuating and the future of foundation aid, which has never been fully funded, we don't know that it will be in the future. And so those are ongoing conversations that we really can't predict. In addition, there's some long-term financial planning that we can engage in to really look at our reserve levels and to see where are they today and where should they be going forward.
And if I can add a little bit to that also, we're also seeing that while the grant opportunities are still being offered by the state and by the federal government, oftentimes those pots are a lot smaller than what has been given over the last 2 years. And it's also more beneficial because of the unique nature and the way that the grants are being offered, that districts form consortiums to apply for those funds, which we are already starting that practice. So we're actually in the process of receiving a grant where we are part of a consortium that applied for it because we knew we wouldn't be able to get it on our own, and many other smaller districts, well, many other districts wouldn't be able to qualify for the grant independently, but together as a consortium, we would be able to maintain that opportunity to receive the funding.
Thank you. And then I know we know about what 74% of it is sort of taken. My question is, when we're looking at these two line items, are these considered discretionary, or some of these a mixture of the two? Like, this is kind of like the pot of funds that sit in here are already the allocated funds?
Which two are you referring to, please?
You know, we're talking about student support services, athletics, and we're talking about transportation and debt service, right? So in these two groups that we're looking at, these are all kind of line items that are really already truly allocated for.
Yes, that's it. A general answer to that is yes. These are kind of our fixed costs. So while we're looking at some of the BOCES services here, it is not the actual student BOCES service we're talking about. We're talking about the administrative fees on the back end.
Got it.
So many of these costs are pretty much fixed, but there's some leeway in there. So that's what we're discussing on each of these line items to see where we have some room to be a little bit flexible, but we do know that there's going to be an increase. And I hope I didn't say that the wrong way.
No, you didn't. I did want to just mention, when we talk about discretionary spending in that discussion of the 26%, keep in mind that our utilities are in that 26%. Keep in mind that our band payments, obligated borrowings, and principal and interest are in that 26%. So within the 26%, there's not as much wiggle room as you would think, because some of those contractual obligations have to be met. So I don't know, I haven't done a full analysis of how much of the 26% can we really adjust, but there are some fixed expenses that we just can't avoid within that 26%.
Got it. So I guess said my request, I suppose, going into whether it's next week or the week after, is could we see, kind of based on where we stand today, what our revenues are that are coming in for this year compared to what we had in prior years? And I feel like you guys did this, maybe it was at the end of last year, where you showed the ERISA funds and you showed some of those things kind of going away and what we were actually getting, so we can just get a sense of where the budget stands, to see the revenues coming in. And then you've also been great in sort of doing the bite-sized, but what would also be helpful kind of each time you kind of build on it is to just show what you summarize sort of the prior time, just so you can get a sense of how each of the pieces.
Great thinking, because that was a discussion for the next one when we get together on the 12th.
Fantastic. Is how they're adding up.
Yeah,
So then you can kind of get a sense of where we're going with that.
I think the balance of the areas that we haven't seen will be presented on the 12th. So that will include instruction, that will include revenue, that will include the items that you're speaking about as well.
Terrific. Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you very much for the presentation. And 20% increase in insurance rates is pretty steep and pretty unexpected, but it's, thank you for sharing the information and letting us know that it's not just New Rochelle, but it's Westchester County concern. And also, we are partnering with other districts around this concern. And you shared information about it already, but can you just share with us a little more about the statewide lobbying for foundation aid allocation change? What is that?
Thank you for that question. So please know that on a monthly basis, I do have some time with other colleagues in small sessions to sit with our elected officials, our state legislators, our assembly persons, and to really share our concern about the inequity as it relates to the foundation aid and the very difficult formula that's behind how the money is allocated to the states. So we're really advocating for a hold harmless, which would mean whatever we got the year before, we're at least guaranteed that much. So this year, we, as a school district in New Rochelle, we're very fortunate that we have an increase, that increase of about $7 million. And I don't mean to bring anybody into the conversation that doesn't apply to New Rochelle, but when we look at our neighbor Mount Vernon lost $3 million compared to what they had last year. So it's not that they didn't get their foundation aid, they got less, $3 million less than they had last year. So the concern really is, and this is where we come together as school districts, we start to advocate for each other, right? Because if it happens to one school district in a given year, it could happen to us in another. So we're really putting together our efforts to advocate for some normalization of what we can expect so that we can build a budget, ahead of time, that we can start to have these conversations and have a real sense of what it's going to mean for our students and for our taxpayers. In addition to that, there are lobbying efforts that can be taken by the individual taxpayers. You can always reach out to your elected officials and tell them that you have a concern about the amount of funding that our school district is receiving. Although we received $7 million, that's not the full amount of money we should have gotten. We're still short about $800,000 or so, if not a little bit more. So we want to ensure that any advocacy that's being done, and I know that our individual organizations, whether it's the unions, whether it's FUSE or ANS, every entity is taking the opportunity to make sure that we lobby so that our students are treated fairly by our legislation and by our funding.
I just want to add to what Dr. Reynolds was mentioning. Like a formula that he just said has not been updated in many, many years, if I'm correct. And also, if you do want to reach out to your representatives, on their website, you'll see information on how to do so, how to reach them, whether it's our state senator, et cetera. So that's where you can find the info.
Thank you. Any other, Ms. Williams?
Is that something that we could put on our website, or could we have like a town hall or just a session where we can just come together as a community and talk about how we can advocate for our school and schools in the region?
We can absolutely look to putting that up on our website. I will have the conversation with several, I'll have the conversation with some people I need to see if we can and what that means. And once we're able to get that clarification, I will inform the board, and then we can talk about next steps beyond that.
Thanks, that would be great.
Thank you. Any other of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leal and Ms. Smythe. And we'll begin to transition back for the next portion of our meeting.
So next up on our agenda are liaison reports. Do any of my colleagues have any liaison reports?
None tonight.
None tonight.
None, all right. All right, we'll move on to public comment. Hold on, lost my speech. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to convene into the public comment period of the meeting. The Board of Education adopted policy 1230 in April 2022 to ensure all members of the public had the opportunity to speak at both of our board meetings each month. We believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues. Having said that, please note that the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, understand the board will not respond to your concerns and questions tonight. We take your concerns and questions seriously and want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will, however, respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. I also want to point out that under state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel and students. Please know, however, that we take personnel concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask you to go through the appropriate administrative channels. Finally, we recognize that right now our nation and our community are polarized on a number of issues. That said, we want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. We ask that speakers please address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. In the unlikely event the meeting becomes unruly, the board will recess the meeting and return once order has been restored. Finally, I want to remind everyone that you may submit written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period if you so choose. Tonight, we've set aside 45 minutes for public comment, where each speaker who has signed up before 3:30 today has 3 minutes to speak. If a person requests to speak after 3:30, speakers may sign up in person at the meeting with the clerk and will be afforded the opportunity to speak during the public comment period if time permits. Our first speaker of the night is Mr. Vincent Malfitano.
Okay. Oh, there you go. Hi, Vince Malfitano. This business that's been going on around town with this the Israeli flag and other stuff, there was an organization that supposedly got started called New Rochelle Liberation Coalition that got involved. And I want to read something that I think is from them, although I can't see it too well. It says, "We are a group of New Rochelle citizens of different backgrounds and ages, concerned about the ongoing genocide against the Palestinians." Whoops, see that? My phone oh, here it is. Against the Palestinians by Israel. We combine, well, I got to put this down. Terrible here. We combine our support for the liberation of Palestine with 4 principles. We are anti-racist, anti-colonialism, we are intersectional, and we are pro-liberation of all oppressed peoples living under white supremacy from Palestine to New Rochelle. The only reason I bring that up, I mean, I may be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but Ms. Lewis is listed as a member of this group. And her Lewis for Neuro site, which she used for her campaign, which was supported by that National Political Action Committee, Run for Something. This concerns me. There are a lot of issues to talk about, nuts and bolts, budgets, buses. But I would like to know who's leading my district. Someone who pushes this white supremacy stuff, genocide, I don't know. So I'm hoping Ms. Lewis can address the community and let us know, are you a member of this group? You can judge someone by the friends they keep. So please, are these your friends that say such things? Do you believe white supremacy in New Rochelle guides your leadership for my children? Help me. I'm very concerned about that. And this is an ugliness in our town that disturbs me.
Thank you, Ms. Malfitano. Anybody else would like to sign up for public comment? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the next item of the agenda, which is new business consent agenda personnel resolutions. Colleagues, can I get a motion and a second to approve consent agenda for personnel resolutions number 24-266, 1 through 10, number 24-267, 1 through 1, number 24-268, 1 through 20, number 24-269, 1 through 3, and number 24-270, 1 through 18, according to the recommended action for each item?
So moved, Williams.
Second, Bavosa.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is new business consent agenda general resolutions. Colleagues, can I get a motion and a second to approve consent agenda for general resolutions number 24-271 through number 24-291 according to the recommended action for each item?
So moved, Ross.
Second, Brooks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. As stated before, our next meeting will be a special meeting Tuesday, March 12th at New Rochelle High School, starting at 7 p.m. Tonight, we are adjourning the meeting in memory of Barbara Smith, a retired accounts payable clerk in City Hall who passed away on February 8th, 2024. Amy Ondek Cholewa, a retired math teacher at Isaac E. Young Middle School who passed away on February 20th, 2024. And Olinda Nunez, a retired administrative secretary at New Rochelle High School who passed away on March 1st, 2024. Colleagues, can I get a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting?
So moved, Williams.
Second, Bavosa.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?